A very good morning to you. You're welcome along to OTB AM. This morning we are enlivened by a very busy day of sport and of course what's happening tonight in the Champions League, but also some breaking news this morning from the Mayo Ladies football team. We'll get to that in a couple of minutes, but first, John Duggan, how are you?
Gerard, good morning.
You've brought some props for us.
Well, it's my first time in this chair in the Off the Ball AM studio, so I decided to do a bit of a spring clean anyway in the last week, given it's September, even though it's not spring. But I brought in the first ever Tottenham jersey I ever got, which was 1987, and you couldn't get this in Ireland at all. Hummel, I think they were a Danish manufacturer because they had the Danish jerseys from 1986. They weren't selling them in Ireland at all. It doesn't fit obviously now. This is the Spurs jersey. I actually have the shorts still as well.
Oh, so wow.
It's quite basic. That was
class though. It's like it's proper, the type of material that made you sweat all day, but you didn't care because you were 10.
Yeah, 87, 88. And then, lucky enough, a couple of years ago, Derek Ling sent me a signed Kilkenny jersey.
That's Clive Allen, right?
That's the Clive Allen, yeah. That was actually the season when he started to wane. It was after the nearly season of 87. Yeah. This is the Kilkenny jersey, which is all signed by the players, and Ryan Cody there at the top as well. Henry Shefflin, Richie Hogan, Richie Power, JJ Delaney, Tommy Walsh. And then I found this as well. I can't actually even remember how I got this, but I found it. It's the 1999 and 2000 Football All-Stars. I don't know where they went, probably somewhere exotic around the world. Aircel, remember sponsoring it back in the day. I don't think Aircel even exists anymore. But I love the kind of the fabric in this kind of jersey. But this has been kind of languishing in a drawer for about 15 years. So what else was I going to do but bring him into the Off the Ball AM studio?
Which year is this?
This was 2015.
Okay,
so we had a do on Today FM, the 15 for 15, the hurling, the best 15 players the last 15 years. And Kilkenny were preparing for the Galway match, so they didn't turn up, and rightly so, because they went and they won the game, but they were too busy, but Derek was very decent to send it in. So, and
it's actually signed in proper marker. None of this, we'll sign one and get them printed.
Yeah, no, it's actually a real one. Once I've got a Tipperary friend and I showed it to him once and he nearly ripped it off me and put it in the bin, but look, no, I rescued it because it's an iconic piece of memorabilia from the best hurling team of all time in my view.
Yeah, and that might, like almost everybody is still around in 2015. I can see Jackie Tyrrell's name there, I think. Oh, maybe it's not.
Walter Walsh, Conor Fogarty, they're all there. Jerry Aylward.
Walsh as well.
Yeah.
Is that Tommy Walsh up there?
Yeah, Tommy Walsh is in the middle there, yeah.
Yeah. All right, so let's tell you what's coming up. We'll talk about these a little bit later on as well. So NFL with Mike Carlson last night. If you missed it, the Chicago Bears beat the Seattle Seahawks. So the Slate 2 games are in the books. We'll talk about that around about 9:10. Conor McGregor watch. Niall McGrath is going to join us a little bit later on around about 9:20. Niall is obviously the presenter of the MMA section of Talking Brawls, which is our combat sports podcast. Off the Brawls. Sorry. Off the Brawl. I got it wrong. I'm getting fired. We talk Champions League around about 8:20, and we'll get back into the Seán Cavanagh story around about 8:30 with Seán Cavanagh, who actually joined us in studio last week for an interview about his book, which is really interesting stuff, and there are some sections of it which are very relevant to what happened to him at the weekend. We're going to get to the Mayo Ladies story right now in the papers.
OTB AM.
Thanks to Screwfix.ie. Championing the trade with a dedicated call centre.
So yesterday, that group of the Mayo Ladies footballers who are no longer part of the Mayo Ladies footballers setup, I guess they're now the ex-Mayo Ladies footballers, held a press conference. The departed, I'm being told that they should be called. It's a little bit...
what's that song? The Dropkick Murphys, is it?
Yeah. So they held a press conference last night to go through and refute some of the details that the Mayo Ladies football manager had put into the public domain in recent weeks. He was basically saying that this was about the players' feelings because they'd been dropped, and a bunch of the players actually went to the press conference last night and made the point that, well, we're still in the team, so we were getting picked. There's at least 4 of them who hadn't been dropped. So it wasn't anything to do with that, and it was to do with issues around their sense of fairness, and the whole issue of player safety and player welfare came up in those welfare issues, and they go into great detail about it. Apparently the press conference lasted for about 50 minutes last night, so you're going to hear clips for this right across the day, and you'll get more details of it as well. We have a clip here from Fiona McHale that we can play you. So just have a listen to this. This is them kind of fighting back against what Peter Leahy had been saying during the week.
When you don't make the starting 15, obviously you're very disappointed, and obviously you're going to try and find a way to bridge that gap and get back to the starting 15, and you're mad to try and find a way or find out when you're going to get back. However, and this is crucial to understanding why this happened, the opportunity for some people to learn and improve is not given by the manager. The manager referred to this on his podcast that he has a commitment to equality, but we never saw evidence of this commitment. We would consider what equality is that it's having respect for everybody, having respect for everyone at the same level. Just some examples to show that this was not an environment that we were in was that some people were not given feedback. Some people directly asked for feedback off the manager and they were not given it. One girl did not make the starting 15 for the Connacht final, and during an individual meeting she had after the Connacht final, she was given feedback then as to why she wasn't starting, and the feedback she was given was that she was lazy. Another player was told that she wasn't committed enough despite having only missed one training all year. Like, there's 4 of us here who were started this year, started in the Connacht final. Majority of people here have all had significant game time, so why would we leave for those reasons? Why would we leave for selection issues? It's absolutely crazy for people to even think that, or for it to be even suggested by people. So I want to clarify that was not the reason we left.
Okay, so there's some other aspects to this statement that we can bring you this morning. We've got some screenshots from that. Yeah, so my eyesight isn't going to be so great that I can read this. Okay, ultimately, our issues related to a lack of communication, being undermined, intimidated, feeling isolated, and eventually helpless in the entire situation. The whole experience had a significant impact on our mental health. We use the term unhealthy and unsafe and accept and take responsibility for the implication of this. Because that was when Cora was on here last week and the unhealthy, unsafe was mentioned, that certainly got a lot of people's backs up. And
well, it's very strong language, and when I wrote down the statement about half an hour ago, it was exactly the words that I wrote down: lack of communication, being undermined, intimidated, feeling isolated, significant impact on mental health. So the question I was asking myself, what are the specifics of this? And I think that lady has just given out some of the specifics. But in Mayo, men's football and Mayo Ladies football, there doesn't seem to be a degree of cohesion at the moment. And when you're seeing Dublin win back-to-back titles in both ladies and men's football without any kind of drama, the county boards, I know they're separate county boards, just need to get a grip on this and sort this out, because this being played out in the public and he said this and she said that is not good for anybody.
It feels like the county board might be part of the problem in this instance as well. Another screenshot for you, the second one of this. I can read this for you. In addition, mediation, which was another opportunity for engagement and agreement, even to disagree, was hindered by what we believe was an unfair process. So we're given to understand that, pardon me, there was some mediation and that the mediation process got set up. So what we'd heard was that there were 4 separate rooms. I mean, this is exactly how the peace talks happened. You get 4 separate rooms, you get the management in one, you get the remaining players, you get the leaving players, and you get, I don't know if it was the county board or somebody else, but apparently this was a county board appointed mediator, and it looked like this process was going to go somewhere, but it just fell apart after the first time that there was any actual mediation. So some efforts were made, and then the departed players felt like the county board was going to be sitting in judgment on the players who left, so they're kind of judging themselves, really, because it's like their appointee and their management team and their structures versus their own players who have departed. You can see how if you're the departed players and you're raising issues to the county board about...
Well, obviously there's a breakdown of trust there, complete breakdown of trust, it seems. And what are you going to do now? I mean, where's it going to go?
Yeah.
They just need to get it sorted. Because this is embarrassing for Mayo to be in the public eye in this way and to have 50-minute press conferences.
Not great for women's football the week that they've just put 50,000 in Croker.
Well, and Dublin and we've seen like even Mick Bowen being linked with the Roscommon job this morning in the papers, and that just shows how well Dublin are doing, the Roscommon men's job. So get your house in order and come to a resolution on it.
Let's bring you one last screenshot from the statement here. So this is, we must be able to listen. This is talking about whistleblowers. We must be able to listen when they have a problem with structures in place. We must not publicly shame them or indeed ban them from doing what they love before we hear what they have to say properly and before we consider player welfare in its truest sense. I mean, I think everybody would agree that if somebody puts their hand up and says, I've got an issue, that needs to be heard properly. The one caveat to that is that the players probably needed to come out with the full version, chapter and verse, in advance of this, that there's just been too much of the innuendo, and there's just been too much of the
specifics. You need specifics. What are the specifics of the case?
Yeah.
And I think once you have the specifics down in writing, because I found the statement was very, very hard-hitting in terms of language, but not great on the terms of specifics, which obviously are there because this seems to me that they feel that there's a lack of respect there, and a significant impact on mental health is not something you want to be reading at all.
No, for sure. Let's bring you through the newspapers this morning. So, clean slate, Europe's finest resume quest for the big prize. Big Cup is back tonight, and it's back with a bang. PSG against Liverpool is about as tasty an opening fixture as you could get.
Yeah, brilliant. Liverpool reaching the final last season. Thomas Tuchel going back to Anfield after that amazing game they had, Liverpool and Dortmund, a few years ago. Of course, he was Klopp's successor at Dortmund, and Liverpool have started the season so well. 5 wins in a row? First time that's happened since 1990 in the Premier League. There's only been one change to the Liverpool team. I think there was Henderson came in for Keita one match. I think Henderson's going to play tonight, but apart from that, a very settled team, and you got the likes of Mbappe, Neymar, Cavani. It's going to be a mouth-watering game at Anfield at 8 o'clock tonight.
So the other stories there at the front. Duffy to the rescue. Ireland star inspires Brighton comeback at Southampton. Big Shane Duffy.
Yeah,
he scores them one end, he stops them at the other.
Well, it only came 2 minutes after Southampton got their second goal, so that really got Brighton back into the game. The second time they'd done it, they did it against Fulham as well. Empty seats, which I found interesting at St Mary's last night.
Really, for a local derby?
Yeah, I was checking out the ticket prices, about £35 sterling, but a lot of empty seats I saw. But I knew the moment that penalty was given for Glenn Murray, I just got Mark Hughes, the referee. I was like almost opening the book on it. He's going to start. What's he going to say with the referee? And he goes, "Yeah, it's a soft penalty."
Yeah. Mark Hughes.
It's just funny. It was just funny. I'm sorry. Bit of schadenfreude.
Taking on Mark Hughes and Leicester this season. Lay down law. Kelly calls for zero tolerance on indiscipline. This is the former GAA president, Seán Kelly, saying that the GAA needs to send out a loud message that indiscipline will not be tolerated. This is the continuing issue around the game at the weekend, in which Seán Cavanagh suffered those injuries that you'll have seen the pictures of. Tyrone County Board has committed to investigating incidents in 2 club games over the weekend, which produced 11 red cards, 3 black cards and a vicious all-in brawl. So they're the 2 fixtures that have made it to the public domain, one because a picture appears on Twitter and one because a video appears.
We'd like to see maybe a video of the Moy game and Eden Dork game. 6 red cards and 20 other cards?
Yeah.
20 yellow and a black.
No straight reds though. There's no extreme violence in the
only 27 cards, that's all. I saw the statement that they brought out last night when they said, obviously they're condemning any kind of violence, and we wish our best to the players who suffered injury, whether accidental or otherwise. I thought that was a strange word to put in there.
Do you think they're leaving open the prospect that they, if video footage emerges, then at that point they will actually act on it, as opposed to, if you don't give us the video footage, we can't do anything. There's like a bit of back and forth.
There's got to be video footage. We could do it seeing it. And Peter Canavan was on last night on Today FM, and he was talking about some people said it was accidental, and there wasn't a clarity necessarily around the incident, and he was defending Tyrone, and I could understand that. They have come under the spotlight, and I think that the chip shop nature of that was the first game, the Stewartstown match.
Yeah.
That doesn't look good, and I suppose it came a few months after the under-20 match between Armagh and Tyrone, which you had, I think, 10 players suspended, and then I think 8 of them got off. I think they were Armagh players. So, look, it doesn't look good, and it's up to, the county board need to show strength on this, and Croke Park maybe need to look at it, because it's just not good for the image of the game. But I do think it's less prevalent than it was, because actually smartphones are actually probably a deterrent for this.
You hope, definitely. You might have seen the footage of the attempted robbery in the Bookmakers in Cork.
The grandfather.
He's 84.
Yeah.
I had no idea. I thought, that looked like a man in his 60s. What the hell is he doing getting involved? He's 84.
But it just showed how cowardly they were. Once they were confronted that they did a legger themselves.
I presume the gun was empty. I mean, I hope it was.
Yeah, I think Tommy, the producer, was saying that it's a no fear situation, and it's maybe if you've lived a long life, you actually, know what, you're interrupting my betting day. Like I'm a pensioner here. I'm having a bet, and you're really interrupting this with a hammer and a sawn off.
Yeah,
it was pretty mad.
Yeah, I mean, he kind of kicked the shit out of the guy with the hammer.
People of the Ear Awards.
Oh yeah, I mean that's why we have them, I suppose. I keep fit. I go to the gym and I do a bit of swimming. I suppose you could say I'm fit. Well, yeah, Jesus. Was he all right afterwards? Like no cuts and bruises. I didn't see, but
he looked fine. I mean, I'm sure there's a degree of adrenaline, and he's probably a little bit shook afterwards. But that's just not what you want to see. It's like, in all seriousness, it's pretty unsavoury stuff to see. Yeah,
I mean, you definitely wouldn't recommend people taking on who knows what the hell people who are robbing the bookies are on, how high they are. On adrenaline and whatever else. Right, let's move on. Roscommon set to target Dublin Ladies boss Bowen. This is the story that John's already mentioned. Mick Bowen has been apparently targeted by the Roscommon County Board. He's obviously saying that he's playing down speculation at the moment.
Bit of a could story. Oh, he could be. I didn't think it had that much strength to it.
He's been linked with...
don't like these linked could stories.
He's been linked with a lot of things. Well, one that happened yesterday was Keane O'Neill being linked with Munster. It's been shot down by Munster today, saying that they have no information about that. Now, I guess if you were going to do it, you were trying to appoint somebody and that was an open competition, then you would say, nope, nothing to see here, folks. But I think it's probably good news for Kildare if he doesn't get that Munster gig. But obviously if he wants the Munster gig, it's great news for him. Levy and O'Brien hand Ireland and Leinster double fitness boost. So Dan Levy is going to be fit to go at the weekend. Seán O'Brien probably going to be fit to go the weekend afterwards. So who plays 7? Brian O'Driscoll was pretty close, or pretty clear about this. He's like, Seán O'Brien plays, and then you build the team around him because he's like the best player in the world.
Yeah,
when he's fit. So
yeah, hope he stays fit. I think it's been hip and shoulder problems he's had over the last year. Yeah,
he looked pretty lean when he was in
for the horse racing.
Yeah. For that racing a couple of weeks back. So, look. I mean, he can play 6, he can play 8, he can play 7.
It's a good problem to have. I think the more the issue is Conor Murray's position at the moment, and for the World Cup, that's more probably of an issue that we need Sexton and Murray fit.
Yeah, look, there's no point in us pretending that we can survive an injury to either of those two.
Not with South Africa research.
But you probably have to plan for an injury to both of them and hope that some miracle happens.
Yeah, I think with Carberry, obviously that's a good thing that he's gone to Munster. He's going to get that game time. But I'd be more worried about Murray's position.
Club believes Liverpool have unfinished business after Kiev. Final defeat to Real Madrid has hardened teams' resolve to go one step further. This is all pre-tournament platitudes. Let's see how they get on tonight against PSG. The talking is done on the pitch, I believe, is the appropriate cliche. And Manchester City and Raheem Sterling have reached an impasse in contract discussions. With the clock ticking, he will enter the final year of his deal in the summer.
They'll sort that. That's just agent talk.
Yeah, but if you're him, you're like,
where's he going to go? Where's Raheem Sterling, who has been very well managed by Pep Guardiola? Where's he going to go and get it?
Somewhere they pay him more money, John.
Yeah.
Somewhere they give him the transfer fee that he's worth. Because he's worth between 50 to 100 million, depending on whoever's going to pay the money, right?
I'd hope he's mature enough to know he's on a good number where he is.
I'll have like half of that up front in cash and then the same wages I'm on. It's hard to turn down 25 million.
Yeah, I'm not even thinking about this. I'm not even thinking about money.
Is he mature enough to turn down 25 million? Or silly enough?
City will sort it out for him.
Fanning named as Waterford manager. We haven't spoken about this yet. So Mount Sion's Pádraig Fanning is the new Waterford hurling boss.
Grandfather was president of the GAA.
Right.
And he's also from Austin Gleeson's club, which I think is a big important thing because he's the most important player in the Waterford team.
You call that steeped?
Yes, you do.
In the culture. Yeah, like it's interesting they've gone for an inside person.
Well, he was part of Davy's backroom team in 2008 when they reached the All-Ireland final. He was also working with Davy at Wexford, and he worked with Cheddar Plunkett at Laois. So he's done his time in terms of backroom teams. I think he'd probably be a good choice on Shoreside, and they haven't got an outsider in. I think that was the talk that they would after 5 years of Derek McGrath. It didn't seem like Derek McGrath did 5 years, but I think that's the thing with managers are often there longer than you think.
Yeah. Pat Gilroy obviously not.
There you go. Is Derek McGrath in line for the Dublin job now?
Gone after a year. Jesus, I didn't even think of that.
You know, Anthony Cunningham, Matty Kenny, of course, you got the 2 Galway lads, Coola, and the backroom team. Cunningham's been in, but Derek McGrath, you never know. Could be a left field choice.
It'd be brilliant.
Yeah.
He'd actually be perfect for it.
Yeah.
The style of play would be perfect.
So if it does happen, you know where you heard it first.
Yeah.
Not that I know anything, any folks, I don't know anything.
All right, we'll stick it out there. and see what he has to say. Obviously, as you said, Anthony Cunningham and Matty Kenny, who of course have history of having worked together in the past themselves. So it'd be interesting if Matty Kenny was to get the gig, would he keep as much of the setup in situ?
Well, I think there's been a huge improvement. I think the players have bought into Pat Gilroy and his team.
That's the issue, isn't it?
And you know, were they doing that before? So they were unlucky against Kilkenny, and they pushed Wexford and Galway very well on the round robin. And what you want to do is, the round robin is pretty merciless. If you're out of it, as Waterford find out, and Tipperary found out, that you know it can bring changes. But I think in Dublin's case, it was just a case of Pat Gilroy's got work commitments.
Yeah.
So with the tabloids that I have here, holy cow, Trippier and Toby Axton shock Spurs shake-up. Then Poch talks a load of old bullocks. This is the quote: "It's like a cow that every single day during 10 years sees the train crossing in front of the same what's it again? Time. And if you ask the cow what time is the train going to come, it's not going to have the right answer. In football, it's the same." So he's effectively saying that experience doesn't count for anything. But well, I think the tabloids are trying to make it more of a meal than it is. Alderweireld and Trippier were one of the 9 Spurs players, or 2 of the 9 Spurs players that reached the World Cup final weekend. I think there's a degree of fatigue around Tottenham at the moment. They've lost 2 matches. I think it's no coincidence that Lucas Moura and Harry Winks and Eric Lamela were the most impressive players of the day. They had easy summers, and that's the worry for Spurs, that they're a little bit fatigued. I think a couple of years ago they only had 1 win in 10 matches from mid-October onwards. Right. And there's that little bit of a slump, that there's a bit of a danger with Spurs. But good memories of the San Siro, where they had the biggest ever win in the Champions League against AC Milan a few years ago. Peter Crouch scoring the winner there, and Gareth Bale scoring a hat-trick against Inter a few years ago as well. So you don't know with Spurs, but after such a brilliant performance at Old Trafford, it's a bit of a disappointing couple of weeks, but we'll see what happens tonight. But I'd expect maybe Aurier will come into the team, and Davinson Sanchez will come into the team.
This is the bit where you don't sign players in the summer and it actually
Well, that's it. They're the only team in the Champions League who haven't signed a player. It's funny, I was actually WhatsApping my nephew, who's a season ticket holder at Spurs, last night, Duncan, and I said, "What's this going on?" He was at the Liverpool game and he says, "Like, they didn't sign anybody. Yeah. Look what Liverpool have done with Van Dijk. I know Van Dijk came in earlier in the year, but Fabinho, Keita, Alisson and Shaqiri."
And even like Keita was signed a year ago.
Yeah.
Like, even if Spurs were thinking long term, if there was some activity that they could point to and say, "We are investing in the team, we're investing in the new stadium, we're just buying a bit of time here, lads."
It's too easy to give the stadium as an excuse. As far as if you want to be at the elite level of world sport,
your team has to be ready for the stadium.
Nay stopping him. Jurgen Klopp admits it'll be virtually impossible to stop Neymar at Anfield tonight, but he insists Liverpool will not resort to kicking him out off the park in the Champions League showdown against Paris Saint-Germain. Defending Neymar in the World Cup, and I would agree with that, having been there and seen some of the treatment Neymar got. Neymar was looking to protect himself, and Liverpool are not really the type of team, I think, to kick players. Paris no match. Bullish Klopp wouldn't swap his strike force for anyone. No, not even PSG's 420 million. Mbappe, Neymar and Cavani, the dream team there.
The Peter Canavan aspect to this, and you were saying he was on The Last Word last night. There's an interesting kind of duality. The Star saying that he's wondering if there's an agenda against him, and the Mirror saying that if this was deliberate, then you can't sit back and ignore it. So,
well, I think he can say both.
6 of one, half a dozen of the other.
I think he can say both. He can say, look, there's a degree of focus on Tyrone, which is that fair? Because this probably does go around. This is an issue more wider in the 32 counties.
I mean, it is an issue, right? But there's a bang of whataboutery about that. Like, the current piece of information we have.
Yeah, the facts we have.
Now, Donegal, we're getting it last week because there was an under-14 match where the referee was locked in the dressing room, and then there was a brawl in a senior match. Maybe the referee was locked in the dressing room in the senior match. Anyway, it's hard to remember which of the current violence against referees and mass brawls we're supposed to be dealing with, but the most recent ones are
the 2 ones in Toronto.
One of the most famous footballers in the country who's just released a book.
Yeah. But also in the book talking about being spat on and bitten. So it's not, and I think that a lot of that, and the photo was published. He wouldn't have been published surely without his knowledge or imprimatur.
It's funny, he didn't publish it, somebody else published it. But
surely he would have said, take it down.
Well, exactly.
So, look, I think, first of all, we have to see what Tyrone's reaction to this is. But I think there needs to be Tom Ryan or John Horan, they need to come out and say, look, this is not on as a cultural thing in our organisation. If this happened on a Friday night at 1 o'clock outside the chip shop, would the police be called? And would this be before the courts, this kind of stuff?
You would hope so. You would hope so.
So that's, I think, really the issue here. And it's a case of what money talks in life. And, you know, I don't know whether they could issue, I'll have to go through Congress or whatever, but is there some kind of sanctions they could bring in, financial sanctions for these kind of things? Can teams be just thrown out of the championship?
Clubs disbanded?
So
you can't do this anymore.
You just can't do it anymore. And if you have a zero tolerance approach, does this happen in hurling? If you have a zero tolerance approach to all these things, it'll be pretty quickly sorted. The Herald, we had this Roscommon chasing Mick, the Mick Bowen story, and Klopp, we start again. Reds are like virgins on Euroquest, says Jurgen. And then a couple of interesting pieces today, Ger. The Racing Post is always good with these supplements they bring out. They brought one out for the World Cup and they got one again for the Champions League, 32 pages. Mark Langdon, Premier powerhouses can conquer Europe. Manchester City and Liverpool should fear nobody on the continent. I'd also agree with that. I think City and Liverpool are two teams that are going to be going very close to the Champions League.
Still your favourites overall for the whole thing?
Yeah.
I just, you know...
9-2 favourites. Barcelona 6s.
What are Real Madrid?
Real Madrid are 8-1.
Like...
they've lost the X Factor, they've lost Zidane and they lost Ronaldo.
I know, but they're still Real Madrid, who've just managed somehow to be really crap all season and win the Champions League. Like, they still have a really brilliant team and they have the know-how how to do it. They've got Luka Modric, they've got Gareth Bale. I just think that, like, is it 9-2 for City?
Yeah.
I mean, come on. Show me the last time that City won a European Cup. And how long is it since Pep won a European Cup?
2011.
It's been a while.
Yeah.
You know?
So it's 8 years not even getting to the final. Liverpool are 12-1, 14-1 in places. So they're more an interesting bet for me, Liverpool. Atletico Madrid, solid enough. The actual final is in Atletico Madrid's ground.
Yeah.
The Wanda Metropolitano, which I'm hoping to go to. And this is a great article to finish the papers, Ger. Roy Keane, Henry Winter. Keane has lots to offer, but he needs to cool the fire. Henry Winter is the doyen, the most esteemed.
The richest.
British soccer writer, so I think you pay attention to whatever he said. I saw this last night online. I said, well, I've got to read this, because I thought Eamon Sweeney's article over the weekend was one of the best articles, whether you agree with it or not, one of the best articles I've read all year about Roy Keane, about how culture has changed and how maybe some of the tactics are beginning to fade away in a different society. So this is the way even it opens is just really, really good from Henry Winter, who was in Galway last weekend at a friend's birthday celebrations, listening to the kind of the debate over Roy Keane and whether he's right or whether he's wrong on the way he treats players, or the way he deals players, or maybe tries to motivate players in his own mind. Shortly before Roy Keane finished his UEFA Pro licence at Warwick University in 2008, he chatted to tutors, marvelling at his coursework, the tutors considering some of the most innovative they've witnessed. And then just various quotes in this really hard-hitting article at times. Keane, inhibited by his dysfunctional character, is hopeless at man management, the most important quality for a leader in the dressing room, along with recruitment and ability to react during matches, and tends to lash out verbally. Players are humans with different triggering points. It cannot be the easiest life on the road as a coach, living in hotels with a minibar lurking in the corner of the room. This is Keane. This is also football, home to competitive individuals, warriors who struggle in retirement. All this decrying, Keane ignores one of the saddest narratives of football, coming to terms with life on the sidelines. It's this anger from a flawed individual that needs to be scrutinised by a sport concerned about the welfare of its practitioners, past and present, not simply dismissed as the ramblings of a madman. And those who patronise Keane as of limited intellect have clearly never met him. But he said Winter says he picked the wrong targets in Arthur and Walters, both of whom have experienced difficulties in their own lives.
Yeah.
I'm just and then finishing off, lauding Keane. He was that good. Keane could defend us as a player and attack, always leading, never hiding, just incinerating opponents with a pass and stare. He just needs to put the flamethrower away now. A bit more subtlety required, a bit more. Ferguson had that ability to just be on the plane of fear and support. And I think that's really the whole theme of this piece.
If you look at the evolution of Cristiano Ronaldo under Alex Ferguson, you wonder, like, Keane obviously loved him as a player and said he had a lot of time from the get-go, but you do wonder how he would have treated him as a manager. Would he have been able to get the most out of that character, where Ronaldo stands in front of the mirror and goes, Messi's not as beautiful as me. Like, you just wonder if that's the subtlety that is, at the moment, not on evidence or on display yet from Keane, the manager. I still think...
Or assistant manager.
Yeah, I still think that he's going to be one of the best and most interesting football pundits who like draws attention. And if I was in charge,
doesn't want to be a football pundit though. He wants to be a manager.
Well, I think that if BT or Sky were to come along and go, "This is the Thierry Henry money. What do you think, Roy?" He'd be like, "Ooh, Thierry Henry money,
Raheem Sterling money."
Oh yeah, exactly. Either of those.
Interesting you talk about Ferguson there. The one player Ferguson, I wouldn't say indulged, but he managed him a little bit differently to other players, was Eric Cantona. But the Kung Fu kick happened. And he's just, the way he supported him at the time. And I felt that Ferguson knew there were some certain players and people like, he definitely just fell out with, as a Gordon Strachan or Jaap Stam or whoever. But he realised elite level, world-class players needed a certain, not indulging, but they just need to be treated a little bit differently. And I think that Ronaldo is a key example, Messi the same. Even when I actually think about Liverpool, does Salah need to be treated? I think Salah's quite a calm character. But yeah, you have to realise that human beings are very complex, and with the money in the game now, the footballers are they're probably more wrapped in cotton wool than the old days. And I think Keane was from that era and has straddled both eras. And it's difficult probably to reconcile in your head. Well, this is how I played. It was Clough. It was all these days. And now the game has changed where the players are more powerful because of the money in the game. Yeah, good stuff. Okay, we're going to leave the papers there for now and let's move on. We're going to hear from Seán Cavanagh, our interview about his book. He joined us in studio late last week to talk about that in advance of the club game at the weekend, which has obviously led to so much controversy. But he is going to be coming up in just a minute. First though, we want to play you this. It's Sinead Finnegan, part of the successful two-time now All-Ireland Dublin Ladies Football Champions, speaking with Richie last night on the show.
What was the training week like coming into the All-Ireland final? What kind of hours are you putting in with the rest of the squad coming into
it? Was really difficult, yesterday? To be honest. I couldn't wait for the final to come because training was so hard. But yeah, it was just really, really high intensity all the time, and everybody was driving each other on. And there's 39 girls in the panel, and literally every single person was busting their arses to make everyone a better player and make sure that we got the performance today. So has been extremely competitive over the last 3 weeks and very, very, very hard at times. You'd be absolutely wrecked after training. So we were glad to see the final week come because we were looking forward to a bit of downtime because we'd been working so hard. But yeah, it was great. Well,
little did you know you still had that Monday morning review to go through this morning as well.
I'm thinking the same thing.
Aoife Fitzgerald in the previews of the game, Sinead, he was talking about the fact that, this game with Dublin was only going to be just another game for them, that they weren't necessarily looking at the previous year's encounters, especially that run of 3 finals that you had together before 2017. For ye, was it a case of just another game? Because there seems to be, don't want to say rancor, but there's definitely a little bit of bite between the two sides.
I do think it was just another game. I know that there has been previous experience with Dublin and Cork, but at the end of the day, both sides were 2 different teams, and we really respect Cork, and we were nervous enough coming into it. We knew that it was going to be a really tight match, and nobody was really focusing on the history, to be honest, because the two sides were different. Even the management team were different. It was all kind of changed. So, you don't really care who. Well, not that you don't really care, but you're not really focusing on who the opposition is. It's more so, trying to win the final. And when you get that win, it's some feeling.
Sinead Finnegan speaking with Richie last night. Now, Will is here. How you doing?
Yeah, morning lads. The Mayo Ladies footballers who left their inter-county setup this summer have broken their silence finally and clarified comments regarding the welfare issues that caused them to depart Peter Leahy's side. Speaking on OTBAM earlier this month, Cora Staunton had cited an unsafe environment and other undisclosed welfare issues as part of the reason why she and 13 other members of the setup, including 2 of the backroom team, had stepped away. The group say that a lack of communication, being undermined and intimidated were the main reasons they decided to walk away from the panel. They also claim that Captain Sarah Tierney endured an extremely difficult relationship with the Mayo manager over the 2018 season. Peter Leahy had claimed a few weeks ago that it was selection issues were the reason that the players had left. Roscommon could turn to Dublin Ladies football boss Mick Bohan in their search for Kevin McStay's successor. According to a report in this morning's Irish Independent, the back-to-back All-Ireland winning boss is among the frontrunners to become the Rossies' new senior football manager. Bohan has previously worked as a coach with both Clare and Dublin's men's teams in the past. Last night, the Dublin Ladies football panel celebrated their latest All-Ireland success, with a large crowd greeting them to a homecoming in Malahide. Waterford have their managers in place for the coming season. Pádraig Fanning was last night confirmed as the man to succeed Derek McGrath as the senior hurling boss there. McGrath had been in charge for the past 5 years. Fanning previously worked under Davy Fitzgerald during Clareman's spell in charge of the day ship. Benji Whelan was confirmed as Waterford's new football manager. He was the man who led the Nara to the Munster club football title twice in the past 4 seasons. Shane Duffy's second Premier League goal of the season set the wheels in motion for a Brighton comeback at Southampton last night. The Republic of Ireland defender headed home past Alex McCarthy midway through the second half. That was after Brighton had found themselves 2-0 down in the game. It was a late Glenn Murray penalty that saw it finish 2-2 at St Mary's. Both Liverpool and Tottenham are in action tonight. The Champions League group stages get back underway. Last year's beaten finalist Liverpool welcome PSG and their fearsome front three to Anfield in Group C. The Reds captain Jordan Henderson has been asked about the task of trying to stop Neymar tonight.
The world-class player is a tough opponent, so I'm sure it'll be difficult for us as a team to stop him, but we're capable of stopping him and the rest of the team because we've proved that against top players before. He obviously gets kicked a lot, so he needs to try and use it as best he can, but for us we just need to treat it as a normal game, a big game for us, which we've proved against big teams before that we can perform and that we can get the result we need. And he's just one of many good players in the team.
The other game in that group sees Napoli travel to Red Star Belgrade, who are back in the competition. Both of the games in that group kicking off at the new start time of 8 p.m. Tottenham boss Mauricio Pochettino has challenged his team to use their past experience to help improve their performances in the competition this season. They're in Milan to face Inter at the new kick-off time of 5 to 6. And Pochettino's used a slightly unusual analogy to try and get that point across.
Like a cow that always, every single day during 10 years, see the train cross in front in the same time, and if you ask the cow what time is going to come the train, it's not going to have the right answer. It's not going to answer. In football it's the same. Experience, yes, it's of course experience, but hunger, motivation, circumstance, everything is so important.
Okay, there you go. The cow.
Yeah. Just because it wasn't really done in the papers. I was disappointed to see the back pages not heralding in a much bigger way what the eventers did yesterday. They've qualified for the Olympics in Tokyo 2020, and for the first ever time since these games World Equestrian Games were initiated in 1990, we've won a team medal. We won silver. So we had Cathal Daniels, we had Sam Watson, Pádraig McCarthy and Sarah Ennis all winning silver, and Pádraig McCarthy winning a silver in the individual competition. So fair play to them, going out to North Carolina, and what an achievement. So Tokyo bound, and probably deserves a bit more credit in the press than it has got today.
Good stuff. Thanks for that. Thanks for that too as well. Now, here's our piece with Seán Cavanagh. He popped in to talk about his new book, The Obsession. In a little while, we're going to get stuck into the dark side of the GAA. Have a look. So the book is called The Obsession. It's by Seán Cavanagh, and he's here with us to talk to us about it. Seán, how are you?
I'm good, sure.
I want to start right off the bat by saying that we have a constant ongoing argument here that the team of the decade in the noughties was in fact Tyrone, because they beat Kerry in all of the big games that they ended up playing them. And so while Kerry might have more All-Ireland in the big matches that actually mattered, Tyrone come out on top. And yet, in your book, you give them these little crumbs of comfort where you say, well, actually on paper, and I'm very disappointed by this, on paper, Kerry actually have a case.
They have a case. I suppose they did the back-to-back. We couldn't do the back-to-back, so I'm jealous about that. Now you're looking at Dublin potentially doing 5 in a row, so I think they win. Dublin wins, and look here, I'll take second and I will throw Kerry third for the
there you go, that's exactly it, yeah.
That's an ambush there from Ger straight off the bat. Once I saw that, I was like, my heart lifted for a moment. I was like, I may or may not have won this argument once and for all, but I come from a very biased point of view, I think.
The killer line, though, was actually that Armagh was your real rivals at that period as opposed to Kerry.
You were, yeah. Like at that time, Armagh won in 02, and it probably angered us enough to go out and prove ourselves in 03. Now, it helped at the same time. We had an amazing team coming all from that 98 minor team, and we won minors in 01, and times were good underage and Tyrone then, and we just had a collective group of players that come through which were used to winning and weren't fearing any team, including Kerry's, including Dublin's, and I pined whenever I sat down and went through the pieces with Damien for the book. You realise that we had it really good back then. You always reminisce about good old times, but that was a serious group of lads and a serious group of character-filled individuals that nothing really fazed. We had plenty of nasty and good and skillful and elaborate footballers back then.
Sometimes they're all in the same person.
And sometimes Ryan McManaman was that man. But yeah, look, it's with fond memories, and being able to get the time to sit back and chat through some of the stories that we had and some of the games that we played back then. It was some of the best moments.
Just to labour the point in the rivalry for a bit, because it is really interesting. Like it feels like there's a bit of a golden period of football there when we look back in retrospect. The quality of your team, the quality of that Kerry team, the quality of that Armagh team. I can see why people at the moment are kind of pining a little bit for proper rivalries. Your rivalry with Armagh was elevated to a point where the Ulster final was in Croke Park, and it was
set out very close to it.
Exactly,
yeah, so
and because of the quality of football that was on display, people were actually coming to it from outside Armagh and Tyrone.
Yeah, and even that game in Croke Park, I remember the first game, for as brilliant as Francie Bellew was, I remember Stephen O'Neill hit him for maybe 11 points or something that day. So inside forwards were very much in their prime at that point in time. We obviously had Canavan knocking around and Muggsy, and it's only maybe whenever you're looking at the players that are currently with Tyrone and you're thinking, how do they compare? And it's just completely different. You can't compare them because we had natural scoring forwards that loved to stay up the pitch as much as possible, and we could rely on them even though they weren't tracking back or doing the work. And to be honest, I didn't track back and do that much work. Kevin Hughes done that for me. I was one of those guys that loved just to go forward, but nowadays our game has gone into a completely running game that resembles probably more of a rugby style hand passing drill. And then by the time maybe the shot comes off, it doesn't come off right, and it can be ugly at times. But look, when it's done right, that type of game, it can be attractive as well. But Dublin's dominance doesn't help it either.
Did you hate Armagh? Did you hate that team?
Hate's a strong word, but yeah, I hated them. Coming from the Moy, it was right on the border. I went to school in Armagh. Everything revolved around the rivalry, because Armagh had probably their greatest. Yeah, myself and Kieran in the final of 03. So
is that when he tries to get you sent off?
No, that is 05, so that is a couple of years earlier than the point he tried to get me sent off. But that Tyrone Armagh thing was unique. I remember before the final, people saying, is there going to be rows in the stands? How there's so much hatred there, and it turned out to be a momentous occasion. Now, it helped that they had won 12 months earlier, and it probably was softened by that. But there's a real mutual respect as well. We always loved to hate people in Tyrone, and we loved to sometimes create a bit of a siege. But at the same time, when you sat back and you realise some of the individuals they had, and the McDonald's and McConvilles and McGreens and McGuinness, then it's probably Armagh's greatest ever team going against Tyrone's greatest ever team.
Yeah.
And being in so close proximity and managed by two really big personalities as well, it was a golden time in Ulster football. And living in the Moy and having a split club where maybe 20% or 15% of our club members are all Armagh, it certainly felt a little bit more personal, and it's certainly enjoyable. Getting the better of them was enjoyable, particularly in 03, and the game in 05, the semi-final of 05, I would have down as probably the most important game of my career, and something that it was the end of that trilogy, and they had beaten us in controversial circumstances in that replay of Ulster in Croke Park, and Canavan's free happening and me dragging him off the ground and trying to get him to hit it. It just, the circumstances and the intenseness of that game was something that was unrivaled to the rest of my career.
Don't rush that bit, because that bit's pretty interesting, where what we see and what's in everybody's heads is Muggsy laughing and joking like they're out kind of just having training in the schoolyard and kind of throwing the ball to Canavan, and it looked to me like the teacher was coming over to take the ball off and going, listen, don't worry. In retrospect, you probably think Muggsy didn't necessarily fully worry that much about these kinds of things and probably would have kicked the point anyway, but before all that, something happens. You have to...
So like the free kick, Stevie won the free kick. I was trying to support Stevie, and I remember the free kick being given and seeing where it was and just looking around to see where Canavan was, and he was along where the technical managerial areas are there in the front of the Hogan stand, and I ran back 20-30 metres to grab him, and he was down I'm not sure whether he was tired or injured. I didn't really care at that point. I literally ran over to him and I grabbed him by the back of the jersey and I said, Canavan, you're hitting this. And he looked at me and he said, no, Sean, Muggsy's hitting them all day, let him hit it. And I says, no, you're hitting this. And I literally grabbed him by the scruff of the back of the jersey and walked him about 5 metres. Now, after those 5 metres, I let him go. I thought he was, that was it. And yeah, seeing the exchange with Muggsy obviously caught the headlines, but I was glad I did that at that point, and particularly with the Tyrone Armagh thing and knowing that that was the one opportunity we'd maybe have to beat that Armagh team. I was glad I made that decision.
That matters more because it comes in the middle. Is that why, in retrospect, it's the most important game, or did it feel like at the time it was the most important game?
I think it was just ourselves and Armagh. I think I would count that 2005 team as the greatest team that I played on, and I think Armagh and getting to know some of their players, even after that, they would say that was the greatest team they had as well. So when you have two teams in such close proximity at their height of their powers, and two great teams that were, and you know, it's that was the moment. I think if Armagh had won that semi-final, I suspect they probably would have beaten Kerry as well.
So in 08, is it 08 where you talk about it? It's a relief that you're actually playing Kerry in the final, that there's like less tension around that?
Yeah, and in 05, and like, because Armagh was there and because they were such a fairly unstoppable force in those early 2000s, and because we put so much energy into trying to match up against them and some of their individuals, whenever Kerry come along, it didn't feel, it was you know what, it's Kerry. I know they're good, but they're not Armagh. So Armagh was a great distraction for us back then, to be able to whenever they get out of the road, then we really opened up, and probably none more so than in 05, because the semi-final was a tense affair. It could have went either road, and it was full of mistakes, but it equally is full of excitement as well. And then we got to the final, and we did open up, and we had some serious scores against Kerry. So it's almost a bit like the Dublin team nowadays, whereby we could play a game in a defensive battle as well as opening up and take teams on, and we fancied ourselves to do that against Kerry.
Yeah, definitely. Like looking back at that 05 final, that goal, the Canavan goal past Diarmuid Murphy, is one of my favourite things ever, because you can kind of just see
it's coolness personified, and that's what Canavan was. Canavan's probably the smartest player I've ever played with, in that he could equally, he made the names an inside forward, but particularly in 05, he remember up in Clonus playing Cavan in the replay, and he played at number 11, and he might have scored 1-7 or 1-8 and was seamless, and maybe set up another 6 or 7 scores. He just was one of those guys who just knew what to do under pressure, and playing with him was an absolute dream, because he knew how to always create space for you. Even as a lad, he was my hero coming on to that team in 2002, and I remember getting the butterflies in my stomach, even seeing him standing and training, and one of the first things he did was take me aside and say, I'm going to do this drill with you on a 2-on-2 drill or whatever it was. And to have that as someone who was quite daunting, going on to a Tyrone team at the age of 18, but Canavan was every bit of a god that had to refer him.
Is his son as good as everybody says he is? Is he as good as Peter?
Apparently so, yeah. I've seen him a couple of times. They are amazingly excited about him up and around Tyrone at the moment, and I think he will start to hit the headlines from next year onwards, hopefully.
Just on that rivalry with Armagh, obviously your wife is from Armagh, and you say in the book that you never even asked Fionnuala whether or not she supported Armagh or Tyrone in those games. Since the time of writing, have you broached that topic?
Surprisingly not, and probably because I know the answer. I know she's going to say Armagh. So yeah, look, it is a strange one over the years, and even towards the tail end of my career, I had to mark Charlie a couple of times. I marked him for a while in the 2014 game up in Oma. We played them in the back door, and Armagh won that day, and that's one of the low points of my career. And then I got my own back then last year in the All-Ireland quarter-final. I got to mark him in Croke Park, and we won that game quite convincingly. So it was a strange one, but yeah, to me it was always Armagh. You always had one eye on what Armagh was doing at any point in the season. So it was a good rivalry to have at the same time.
Yeah, like there was a limit to that, into, I guess, not the hatred, but say if we do call it a hatred, the hatred that was bred into you came quite at a late age, because from a young age it was almost a siege mentality in Ulster, where you would support your Ulster teams. You talk about supporting Derry in '93, and I guess it was just to do with the fact that you were both behemoths on the national stage at that point, which created a rivalry, because being neighbours was almost liking each other at that point, particularly where Ulster had come from.
Yeah, look, I grew up always hearing from my parents and anyone around the community that no matter what team went down south, and that probably was, there was that little bit of a divide that when a northern team goes down south, they're never going to get the rub of the green, and it was up to Ulster to stand up for itself. So I remember standing waving a Derry flag in 1993 in the Mayo Square as Tohill and Brawley and co all come through the Mayo Square. Might have regretted later in years, but no. So and that golden period for Ulster in the early 90s, I was 8, 9, 10 years of age, and I was very much supporting the Down, Donegals and Derrys of this world. That quickly changes once you enter that bubble of county football, and I was in that bubble for quite a long period. So it's only maybe whenever you step out of it, and this year as a pundit and doing a bit of analysis work, you get to realise that, and you get to be a supporter and appreciate some of the great players that currently play with those other teams, because when you're in that environment, all you think about is yourself.
Yeah, there is an element, of course, of being an Ulster Gael at that point as well. And like you write a chapter on the Troubles in the book. You say that like you weren't overly affected by it. Obviously, there was nobody who was unaffected by it, but maybe in comparison to other families, you didn't have it as bad, and perhaps your parents didn't have it as bad. But ultimately, there was a pride there in being GAA men from that part of the country, to a point where now it's not like that at all, particularly in Moy, which is quite a multicultural and kind of a multi-denominational sort of place in Tyrone.
Yeah, look, back then I can remember having a Tyrone zip up top, and I remember looking to go to the swim pool, and my mum saying to me, you can't wear that Tyrone zip up top to the swim pool because you're just not allowed to do that. That's the GAA. GAA doesn't. You're not allowed to be seen in public wearing GAA tops, and that's strange to take as a 9 or 10-year-old lad. But I moved away with my mum. We lived in Coal Island, and it was quite a nationalist area and a good area equally. But Dad was from the Moy, and it was quite a mixed area, but a lovely village and market town and whatnot. So yeah, we moved up there whenever I was maybe 8. And it was like there was murders at that point in time in the Moy, and I can remember hearing gunshots, and I remember lying trying to retrieve balls from ditches, and army men sitting looking at me with the rifles, and that was just a way of life. It was something that you didn't necessarily think too much about, but you look back at it now and think, would I want my child jumping into a ditch and seeing a line of army men with rifles and throwing the ball back at them? Probably not, but that's what Northern Ireland was at that point in time. And I think the GAA now has become such a more diverse place, and it has opened its arms. The amount of playing members even now that are coming from non-Roman Catholic backgrounds is brilliant to see, and we see that in the Moy as much as seeing in even local surrounding communities with all the factories that are in Tyrone and in Mid-Ulster where the Moy is. You'd see people from Eastern European countries come in and play our games, and that's the way it should be. I think that's the way GAA is going to go in future years.
Do you ever think there's a bit of PTSD with regards to the Troubles that's like just below the surface in the north? It always feels that way a little bit, that like there was an attempt for peace and reconciliation. There was something in Dublin Castle that lasted about 3 or 4 years in the aftermath of as set up as part of the peace process. But I do often wonder if like we kind of don't really talk about your experience as a kid walking to your back garden and seeing an armed, probably a teenager or a 22-year-old from Liverpool who's there to escape poverty at the behest of the Tories. Like, there's a madness there, and we never talk about it. It's always like, let's just make sure that period of our history... history tells us that suppressing bad stuff that happened and not talking about it doesn't really lead to good stuff.
Okay, no, I'd agree with that. Now, one thing I'd say, it hasn't been the case for quite some time. So I think as a society, Northern Ireland has moved on, and even as a youngster in the Moy, there would have been a bit of silliness growing up over flags, and there's still in the 12th there would be Union Jack flown, and maybe at Easter the flag of the tricolour, and there's still a bit of that going on, and certainly in some parts of Northern Ireland that does happen, but thankfully I think as a society we've moved on, and flags are less important, and equally
it's the coping with it though. It's more the mental health aspect of that kind of stuff, where like actually that was a bunch of stuff that happened that probably we all need to deal with at some point? Or is it better just to kind of move on and use the coping mechanisms? And
well, at the time, because we didn't know anything different, it didn't really. I don't think it really affected. I don't think it affected me. I was always brought up with mum and dad just saying to respect everyone, and I remember, I referenced it in the book, I remember playing for Dungannon Swifts against Man United and in Stangmore Park in Dungannon, and stand for God Save the Queen. And I remember thinking to myself, this is strange. I didn't really know the obviously the anthem at that point in time, but coming from a nationalist community and living in a mixed area, it was strange. And you would hope that we'll see beyond that as time goes on. I think we are.
Yeah.
It must have been something that, as a players group, you were quite conscious of, or became conscious of, because you mentioned the national anthem there, and of course, Michaela Hart taught you all the national anthem. But was that kind of as a show of, I guess, trying to break down that siege mentality that you talk about there, that the Southerners are always going to screw us over? We're not that different from me.
There was a bit of an element of, we can be as Irish as anyone, and we'll show them. We'll learn around the vein, but equally, and even with the current team and saying the rosary before games, I think Mickey's very good at introducing things which will bond the team, and at that point in time you had a team that Mickey was his first year in charge, and there was various, even though the crux of it was all from that 98 minor team, there was still a few of the older statesmen knocking around, including Cavanaugh, and then there was a couple of lads like myself who had come from the 01 minors, and it was a way of bringing us all together and almost distracting us from the fact that maybe we might lose to Kerry in the semi-final. We used to sing around the vein on the team bus before the bus come into the Cusack stand. We also used to do it at the team hotel. So I think it was a mechanism almost of coping, and as well as trying to say to others, we're as Irish as anyone is, and we can come down to Dublin and we'll prove it. We'll show you. So I think Mickey does that very, very well. He's able to bond the guys through whatever means it is, and make them believe. And we were lucky we had him at that point in time, because he really brought us together, and we also had a great group as well.
Yeah, it seemed he had almost a line for every single county you came up against, a motivational tool for every single one of the 31 potential opponents.
Yeah, look, he was a genius that way. So there always was a reason to win. There always was a way in which he made you feel, and okay, look, maybe I was a bit long on the tooth then towards the tail end of my career, that I'd maybe heard those reasons a few times, so it lost a little bit of effect with me. But no, he's a great way of making you feel that day and that occasion means more to you than anything else going on in your life at that point in time. And I've no doubt, and from speaking to Colin, that the Tyrone guys went to this year's All-Ireland final 100% convinced that they were going to win, and it was the same for me in that last year's semi-final, that I went there thinking there's no way on earth that Dublin can beat us. We felt invincible, and that's what's one of Tyrone's biggest strengths with Mickey in charge.
You've got a mad relationship with Mickey, like when you think about it, and it comes across in the book that it's not a straightforward black and white, we had a falling out and therefore we parted our ways, in terms of you were still able to work together, and yet at the same time you were still able, it seems, to harbour grudges against each other.
I've a complete respect for everything that Mickey did for that group in the noughties in particular, where he did bring us together, and we had so much success, and we owe an awful lot of that to him. Now, obviously wasn't delighted about the Cork thing in 2009 and the supposed roof caving in, but look, in fairness, he did apologise to that. A few months after that, he came to my house and he apologised. So,
but he blamed the ghostwriter, right?
He said the ghostwriter picked him up wrong, and which at the time it was probably hard for me to take, because I was shocked by the whole thing. I remember sitting in my Vanilla's home house on Sunday reading the extracts and thinking that this couldn't be right. But yeah, it was strange then going back for a while. But whenever you're in that, again, you're in that bubble, you're in that environment, and I was able to park it. I was able to say, no, you know what, I'm a Tyrone player, I want to play for Tyrone. You have to, every piece of your focus has to go on to win in the next game, in the next battle. So I was able, even though look, it was in the back of your mind, it didn't. Mickey doesn't have a hugely personal relationship with his players anyway, so it wasn't as if I was losing out on anything.
Yeah, there's no special treatment. What about though tactically? Like, do you begin to have the doubts before last year's All Ireland semi-final, or is it?
No, not at all. And that's a piece I know I was maybe questioned earlier in the summer, the way in which I said that it maybe didn't suit Tyrone and some of the forwards that we've had in the last number of years, the way in which we played. Whenever I was in that environment, I completely believe what we were doing is right there, and it's only whenever you take a step back and you're able to reflect on it a little bit, and you think, you start to maybe knit things together, and by doing the book, I was given the time to do that, and I quickly realised that maybe some of the best players that could have made a real impression on Tyrone football didn't have the best opportunity to do that by the way in which we were playing. But whenever I was in that zone as captain, I very much towed the line. I very much was behind every tactical decision that Mickey and Gavin made. So, when it was thrown back to me earlier in summer that I should have maybe spoken up about the tactics, I don't agree with that, because from my mind at that point in time, those tactics were perfect, and I was going to lift Sam Maguire with those tactics. So I certainly wasn't going to challenge them. And look, I had complete belief in Mickey and what he could do.
Yeah, like at the standpoint, you might be able to say that there was an ideological difference late on when it came to tactics, maybe. But I think one thing, when you come to the idea of why you believed in what you did tactically, was kind of what you had a thirst for. And I think for you, anyway, we might get into it in a little bit in a little while, is your satisfaction that you got from winning, that your trophies aren't on show in the house. You maybe don't derive as much satisfaction from trophies as perhaps other footballers do. But it seems that Mickey Harte wouldn't be in the position he is now, aka still Tyrone manager almost 20 years later, if he didn't have that same level of not deriving as much satisfaction from winning trophies. So is it fair to say that you're both very alike in that manner, more than some people think?
Yeah, and that was mentioned to me recently, and I never really thought about it in that way up until today. And you're probably right. The one thing, whenever I've always been interviewed about Mickey Harte, the first thing that comes to my head is he's such a winning mentality, and he wins at all costs. And I would watch him kicking a ball in a frosty November evening and having a competition with Tony Donnelly, who was with the squad for a long time, but trying to kick the ball over the bar from 20 metres against the breeze, and he would lose, and he'd be in bad form for the rest of the training session, and you're thinking, that man doesn't really care what he's doing, he's just a born winner, and that's exactly what he is. And yeah, there's probably traits in me that maybe at times, because we're quite similar, maybe we clashed, that could be the case. But I have to say, whenever I was in that zone and as Mickey's captain and his team, I was in 100% support of Mickey Harte and everything he did. So it's a strange one. Yeah, there's a couple of bumps along the road, but at the same time, I supported him fully.
It's understandable though, because you had success. It had led to 3 All-Irelands, and if the team dynamic is going to succeed, then everybody has to have buy-in. I mean, you can have your doubts, but was there a forum to even suggest things or have conversations, or is it an open tactical, here's the plan, what do you all think, lads? Because
you're probably angling the autocratic statement, are you?
Well, I'm not really, because I'm just thinking it seems that the Dubs are absorbing information from the players, and that there's a conversation, this is the best style of play for us, what does everybody think? You are the ones who are going to implement this game plan, and so therefore you need to understand every aspect of it, and if you have any doubts, now tell us, because we need to know you have these doubts before we go and implement it.
Yeah, well, we would obviously discuss tactics, and it was, I wouldn't say that Mickey would change his tactics, and I probably more so than anyone was in that position to know an awful lot about how Mickey Harte works, and I knew no matter, but not that I wanted to change the tactics, but Mickey will play in the way in which Mickey decides he wants to play, and there would be plenty of discussion during video analysis of reviewing games, and there would be bits and pieces of feedback, but that's probably one of the strengths of him is the fact that he is an autocratic leader, and that everyone knows the buck stops with him, and the guys use that to their advantage as well, in that no one will stand up and challenge him too often. So you have everyone in that group rowing in the same direction.
In retrospect, that doesn't work, or it doesn't work in the modern environment when you have a superpower like Dublin that you're trying to knock off.
It's strange. What I've seen is a change in players and players' mentalities, and through the 2000s we had lots of players, and we were just blessed. Whenever I reflected back on, you realise that we had players with huge personalities. We had Brian McGuigan's and Racing McManamans, Conor Gormley's, who didn't need to be told that they had to stand in a certain area of the pitch. They played football very instinctively, and they were able to change within games seamlessly. You're watching the All-Ireland final even this year, and you're realising that after 15, 16 minutes, Dublin decide that they're bleeding a little bit, and they all go back behind the ball, steady the ship, and then they get their few scores, and they find their way back into the game. We would have done that quite instinctively, probably in the 2000s, without really knowing of it. I remember being 9 points down against Down, and in the Ulster final of 2003, and I remember it wasn't a call or anything, but there was just the recognition that we had to, at every chance, bomb forward, and we did that, and we clawed back the lead and got drawn through that game out of nowhere. So it's probably changed, and I'm not so sure with systems being quite rigid nowadays that whether the players have the thinking mentality or maybe feel as if they can change things the way in which maybe we would have done back in the 2000s, and we would have had the label of a blanket defence back in 2003. I can never remember a meeting whereby Brian McGuigan or Brian Dooher was told to go back and forage in defence. Never. I was never told to go back in defence. It was probably something we just did quite naturally because we worked out that was the best way of winning that game. But nowadays there are very much it's an X and O. You stand here. This is your place for defence. This is your place for attack. And yeah, look, it's not pretty to watch sometimes, but it's just the way the game is.
Yeah, it's funny you bring up that. It seems two things happened. The first was that team was blessed with talented footballers, but that also things changed for Mickey at some point, that Jim McGuinness comes along, and there's a series of Ulster finals where they're just beating you by a goal, or they're beating you like by a late score, and it's like your team is really close to that team, but they're winning All-Irelands and are genuine All-Ireland contenders, and nobody's talking about Tyrone as All-Ireland contenders at that point outside of Tyrone.
Yeah, and that's where the frustration really started with us, and that's where even me as an individual, you started to have to push yourself that bit harder and wondered how could we beat this Donegal team, and we did copy them. We copied their tactics because we tried to beat them a couple of times. I think they beat us in maybe 11 and 12, and we didn't. Whilst we were getting close to them, they always, as you say, seemed to have enough to get over the line, and there was a bit of that block with Jim McGuinness. Jim McGuinness was just he had our number, so we did. In 2013 we copied his tactics and we played very much like him. Did that suit Tyrone at that point in time? It probably worked okay. We got us to the semi-final. In hindsight, you maybe look back and think, well, did it stand us good in the long term? We've a couple of Ulsters out of it. We haven't won All-Ireland obviously in 10 years, but that's just the way. That's the way the game evolved, and that's the way Mickey and Gavin decided that they would set up since 2013. And that team now it's on a 4 or 5 year trip, trying to tweak that Jim McGuinness system that engulfs Gaelic football at that point in time. It's going to be
interesting to see how close they get to Dublin as they continue on that path, or do they need to blow it up and try and go back to something slightly different? Because
I think there are signs that the game is evolving, and there are more, like, even through the summer and through the qualifiers, Tyrone did play with a Richie Donnelly up and maybe a Conor McCalliskey off him, whilst last year it was very much a Mark Bradley up front, everyone else behind the ball, let's support him. So I think there is a recognition there that they will have to change, and you're watching the David Cliffords of this world with Kerry and the brilliant attack that they have, and I think the game will, I hope the game will evolve again, whereby attacking players are very important to our game, because that's what I think brings entertainment, brings supporters, brings
that's
interest.
Who the kids are pretending to be in the back garden. They're not pretending to be the third half forward whose job it is to track back and
defensive attacker,
to be the extra sweeper, whenever you're out of possession, and then maybe to
look,
lay it off to some guy who kicks it.
You're watching David Clifford now, and you're thinking he's a guy that we all wanted to be, and Peter Canavan was a guy that I wanted to be growing up. So yeah, you hope the game will change like that, and I think that'll only be for the better.
To go back to the 03 team, because there's this moment of triumph, and I don't know, was it the Pauly documentary or was it something else, where somebody in TG Car anyway got the footage of the 6,000 tackles in 4 seconds that Darragh O'Shea suffers in that semi-final. And I think it's this beautiful film where like an entire county's rage at not having reached an All-Ireland final as a group since 96, but really like to be competitors. And it's just this mesmeric attack on the centre of power. And I think it's an amazing kind of testimony to the group as people.
I make reference in the book to that changing room before we went out that day. It was a roasting hot day, and I remember guys normally would have their training tops on in the warm-up room in Croke Park. I remember it being so warm, but I also remember just the speed on which we were doing handling drills, and we were maybe laying into one another as well before we took the field that day, and guys just were ripping their tops off and just sweat everywhere. But use a word, and Becky would have used it quite often, we were like men possessed. We genuinely went out. I remember thinking, sprinting out onto the Croke Park pitch for that semi-final and thinking, everyone's running very fast today, or is it just me? But there was the men around me that day, and because you're watching the Brian McGuigans and guys of that ilk, who maybe wouldn't have been huge runners in most days, sprinting at top speed, it rubbed off on you. And we were a team that day that just were possessed and were determined at whatever cost that we would make that final. And yeah, even losing Cavanaugh, who was our leader in the first half, it didn't take a flinch out of us. I don't think there was any way we were losing that day, and that was the start of it.
I don't remember. Do you already know it's Armagh in the final, or do Armagh play the week after?
Armagh play the week after. Armagh played Donegal the week after. Okay, so it was guaranteed to be an all-Ulster final, but the possibility of the Tyrone game is definitely there for you. So there's this great moment of triumph where the whole county is unified and the style of play has been completely justified, and your identity, I think, is now writ large. And then you come off the field, and that night, puke football is christened. Like this mad, crazy high. Yeah, and as a player, you always say to yourself, I'll not watch or listen to what pundits or media say about me. We did, and that annoyed us as a group, but yet again it was another reason to win. It was another thing that was labelled at us and thrown at us, and to be honest, we were a fairly young group. When you took the old men of Cavanaugh and Lawn out of that team, we were all in our early 20s, so it didn't annoy us all that much, but at the same time you maybe took a dim view on the way in which it's portrayed by Pat Spillane that evening. So and what had been spoken about, it's yet again one of those things you stick up in the change room and think, right, we'll show them the puke footballers. Now the final didn't turn out to be for the purists. It was we probably missed an awful lot of chances, and Armagh clung in the game until Conor Gormley saved us with a last ditch block. But yeah, I think that year was about proving people wrong and about announcing that this group of players really meant business, and we did that.
Yeah, it seems that like everybody says that they don't read the criticism or whatever like that, but it seems that you're an exception to that rule. That you mentioned the Brawley criticism as well, not the Brawley criticism, but the initial Brawley criticism of your minor team when he says you weren't good enough footballers. There's like a catalogue of Brawley criticisms that your minor team just weren't good enough footballers to win All Ireland or whatever. And on the flip side of that, there's a slew of messages or good reports you get after a different game early in your career. I think you get a text from Michaela. There's Brian McGuigan's father has written something nice about you in the paper, and that really gave you a boost.
Yeah, for sure. And everyone will tell you they don't read, but they do, and you're influenced by it. And yeah, I remember that was a game against Mayo. We won in that semi-final, minor semi-final of 0-1, and I probably had my best game in a Drone jersey. And I remember coming home, and we all went to Peter Donnelly's house and had a few beers and enjoyed the crack. When maybe headed out somewhere and come back to his house afterwards, and the game was stuck on, and you were watching it with one eye open and one eye closed at maybe 3 or 4 in the morning, and you're hearing Brawley say there's not one of that team that's going to ever make it for Tyrone at senior level, and you're thinking, I'm only after my best game. This is quite flooring, but look, yeah. You do. There's those moments, and I do remember Frank McGuigan, and it was in a local paper. Frank McGuigan come out, and such an icon of Tyrone football, obviously at the time, and coming out and saying, "I just love the way Seán Cavanagh plays football. He just wants to go and attack," and that probably was me at that point in time. I just wanted to get out in the field to attack with the ball and score goals and score points. It's a very purist way of thinking about it, but that's because I had the Gormleys and Riceys to do all the hard stuff at the back. In the later part of my career, I probably become the enforcer to a certain extent, and I felt the obligation to do that. And as times become leaner, I become more desperate, and I did things in the football field that I certainly wasn't proud of. And
why? I
have to live in it. The obsession to win, and that's what it was. I felt the more I put into it, and the harder I trained, and the fact that we hadn't won, and I won in All Ireland in quite a few years. Me as captain of the team, I took that quite personally, that I felt we had to do whatever it took to win, and I tried to at times set a template, and it's something that didn't sit easy with me, because I wasn't. That's not me as a person. I was never someone who wanted to sledge someone. I was never someone who wanted to pull Conor McManus down, although I'd probably do it again. But at the same time, it didn't. I saw my personality changing because I felt the need to win. And
on the pitch. On the pitch, yeah. Did you change off the pitch at this time? Like, what's your?
I probably become more. I sacrificed more. I sacrificed. I know, like Fionnuala would have said to me more times, you're icing your knee at 11 o'clock at night, or you're telling Fionnuala that you're getting up to go to the gym at 6 in the morning before you go to work, or you have a rehab session to do and you're going to the gym at 11 o'clock at night, and she's looking at you going, this is not rational behaviour for a human being. I'm thinking, you're always nagging, you're grand, I have to do this to get this extra edge. But it at times was desperate. It certainly wasn't rational, but it was born out of I had that success so early in my career, and then I just become obsessed with trying to get it back.
This is why the book works, right? Because you say that there's Michael Murphy's constant battles with him. You call him a fat bastard at some point. Did you think calling Michael Murphy a fat bastard made it more likely that you were going to win the match?
At that point in time, I probably felt by getting in his ear, it might have knocked him off his freeze or whatever that might be. But I look back at it now and I think to myself, that's lunacy, that's madness. But it's amazing the poor decisions you make whenever you're trying to chase something, and whenever you feel that's the right thing to do. A bit like the ice with my knee, a bit like walking after the Mayo defeat in 2016. At that, when you're in that bubble, you don't think holistically. You don't see the bigger picture. There is no bigger picture.
And there's nobody going, Seán, Jesus, this isn't you. You're not playing like you're.
Yeah. My wife Fionnuala, quite often, and even leading up to that McManus incident, at times I might have made a couple of cynical challenges, and she looked at me and she goes, Seán, why are you taking a yellow card? And I'm going, it's only a yellow card. I'm not going to hurt the opponent. I'll never hurt anyone intentionally. Same with Conor, but that was me being desperate, and that's something. As an individual, I don't like that. Would I want my son to do that? No, I don't. But it was me trying to get back the team of the naughties, probably, and trying to get us back to that place. I took the defeats so personally. I was happy for the wins. I don't have a trophy in my house of any sort at all. They're all in boxes up in the attic and still up there. So I was never someone who could really fully enjoy the wins. But I took the defeats really personally, and I felt as if it was my fault, and I had to lead the team. So whenever we lost, it was me.
What would you do differently now at the end if you could go back to your 30-year-old self? Would you still call Michael Murphy a fat bastard? Would you shake his hand and go, listen, I think I'm going to do you today because I'm better than you? Or is there a different way of doing this?
No, yeah. There's certainly things I did, I regretted, Gerald. There's no doubt, and that was one of them, because I knew Michael from the international rules of 2010, and we got on like house and fire. I remember reading an interview at Michael as a young lad, as a 17 or 18 year old lad, saying that his favourite player was Seán Cavanagh. I remember being even touched by that myself, and the fact that all of a sudden 10 years later I was trying to abuse him on a wet Ballybuffet evening just isn't me. I come from a basketball environment that the rules are black and white, and here was me trying to bend the rules of GAA to get an advantage, and trying to beat this great Donegal team who had held the upper hand on us for so long. But it made complete sense at that time, and yeah, I regret it. And if I was to do it again, I probably would change it. Yeah.
But you know that it's ongoing. Most teams in the country at the moment have people doing exactly that, and yet it just seems to be the culture of the games at the moment that the rules will get bent. Even this amazing Dublin team, when Mayo are rushing to get that last kick out away, there's 5 of them.
Galway in the league this year, and Dublin go a point up and start to rugby tackle. And but I can relate to that, because I was that person who, the last thing you say coming out of a changing room is losing is not an option, or you win at all costs. So I had heard that for the vast majority of my early career, and that team, the Naughties, had a hard edge to them as well as being able to play great football. But then, yeah, as some of those great footballers started to fall away, I felt the need to bring some of that stuff back, and because I hadn't got the guys who maybe were familiar with doing with it, I felt as if I had to do it myself.
You were faking it though, right? It seems to me like
it doesn't come naturally with me, Jerry. I'm genuinely the type of person, and anyone even playing with the club at the minute, I'm the giddy kid who goes on to the football field and just loves playing the game. I'm still playing it for the club. I've been contacted by a local basketball team to start the basketball again. I just love playing sport. The negative stuff, I just love scoring. I'm that type of an individual. So yeah, it wasn't me at all. That is my personality changing for the worst because of the need, or feeling the need to succeed at something.
Can we fix that in GAA, or is the genie out of the bottle for that?
I hope we can fix it. I think the GAA can improve. We're obsessed at the moment with rules, but I always felt like, even playing international rules, there was a second referee, there was a video ref, and any of that sort of nonsense. There was always somebody to watch the stuff off the ball, because as a player, and even playing club football, if there's not neutral umpires or linesmen, you're able to get away with a bit more. And everyone sometimes in Ireland, I feel, puts it down to maybe a cultural thing. And that's just what we do. The supporters run onto the field and hit the players. Some cracks, just GAA. At some point, we probably have to look at and say, is that a sport in which we want to promote? Is that a sport that we want, or that we need to compete with the entertainment of soccer and rugby and all the other sports in Ireland? And quite often the answer is probably no.
No, for sure.
Are you going to take out the trophies eventually and put them on the mantelpiece, or even just one All-Star or something like that?
I'm not sure. My wife's very proud about the decor around the house. She's got these curtains cost an absolute fortune. Just £3,000 curtains everywhere. So I'm not sure. Like I'm still in the moment. I'm managing a player manager, the local team there in the Mayo, and I'm enjoying everything to do with that, and obviously delved in a bit of media work, and I've enjoyed that as well. So I'm still in a zone. I'm able to sit back and enjoy our games a bit more. I enjoyed watching some of the games this year, the likes of Shane Walsh with Galway, or Damien Comer, or just watching some of the excellence of the Dublin players, and you're able to sit back and appreciate that, because whenever you're a player, you don't want to appreciate that.
Yeah.
You see that person as an opposition and an enemy almost. So I'm still in my infancy, but I'm getting to enjoy it a bit more.
And does that allow you to gain a greater sense of fulfillment from your Tyrone career? Have you achieved that yet? I guess you're still togging off for Moy every few weeks, so you're not an ex-player yet. Do you think you will get that sense of fulfillment, that sense that I achieved a bloody great career?
I hope so. I am proud, and everything. I'm a very positive and optimistic person about most things in life, so I'm hoping I'll be able to get that fulfillment. I'm probably still not there, because I still am training. I'm training tonight. I'm thinking about the gym. I'm doing all the things that I was doing, but at the same time, that's what I was obsessed. But I was happy being obsessed. The other words that we thought about were challenge and chase, because everything in my life that I whenever it's presented with a challenge, I loved the idea of trying to go after it and trying to beat it.
I love proving people wrong.
Yeah, and you almost get more out of the chase or the challenge or the obsession than maybe you do on the actual day of victory. But that's a strange mind.
One last thing, you mentioned going into punditry. It's a ballsy move to go into the Sunday game when they pissed on your minor team, said you forget about you as a man, and christened puke football, and it's like, yeah, I will take my place on that programme, and I will sit there beside the lads, and yeah, come on.
Look, I wanted to go into punditry. I enjoy that side of things. You learn to be quite resilient, and even as a footballer, you as much as you do read and watch, at the same time you learn that not everything is said and written is truth, and I have certainly even this year seen another side to some of those individuals and realised that some of it is for entertainment.
Right, that's Seán Cavanagh speaking to us about his new book, which is available in all good bookshops and, as the joke goes, some rubbish ones as well. But that was speaking to us last week, obviously, and people have been in touch on Twitter going, where are the facial injuries? He spoke to us in advance of the club game at the weekend for Moy, and it was interesting where he talked about it. There's a cultural acceptance within the GAA of violence 2 days out from ending up with the horrific injuries, facial disfigurement and concussion, when all you want to do is play football.
Yeah, and be Seán Cavanagh scoring 5 points from playing an All-Ireland final and winning 3 All-Irelands and being one of the best and biggest players of your generation, and
a footballer of the year.
Yeah, and part of a team that had never won an All-Ireland in its history before. He was part of that, just a leader, and it's just, there's a cultural issue that needs to be addressed in the GAA pretty quickly, and I think it's important for the top brass to come out and say, like, look, you know, these things are isolated incidents, but we'd rather have 0 incidents.
I think that part of me feels like, oh, what's the point in them coming out? But actually, it's to set a tone.
It's to set a tone. It's to say, this is not on, and we're putting you on notice that we're going to have to look at what we can do in terms of punishment if these things happen or are not addressed, because
and we're coming for you.
Yeah,
like we are aggressively going to stamp this out.
Yeah,
yeah,
and the GAA are well able to do that. Well able to do that.
Okay, we'll come back to that obviously, because it is an ongoing issue, and as we predicted yesterday in the show, it's getting picked up by the rest of the media. So when that happens, it becomes a bit of a self-fulfilling and feeding frenzy. So that story will continue. I just want to go on with this, right? Because obviously this morning, the statement that the Mayo players, the departed Mayo players issued, has been made public. But also what has been made public is the press conference, the 50-minute press conference that they gave last night in Mayo to explain their rationale for stepping away from the panel. I would just like to say at the start of this that we've given Peter Leahy an open invitation to respond to last night's press conference and to their statement and to the press conference. He's agreed to come on the show. He said, though, that he wants to wait until he's had the opportunity to go through the full 50 minutes of the press conference. So just to confirm that we have given Peter Leahy the opportunity to respond to what happened last night, and we will be giving him the opportunity to respond either on tonight's show on the radio or tomorrow here on OTB AM as well. Now, we are going to play you the audio of the press conference. So the statement is relatively succinct, but obviously within the 50 minutes they get into some more details and some more specifics about the reasons why they stepped away from the panel. A little bit earlier on we heard from Fiona McHale. Here's how last night's press conference with the departed Mayo players began.
I first of all want to introduce myself. My name is Sarah Tierney and I was the captain of the Mayo Ladies until I stepped down earlier on this year. I first of all want to welcome you all here tonight and thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to be with us. Please bear with us tonight. As you can imagine, we're in a very unfamiliar environment. We're not used to a setup like this in front of us. And I just want to stress as well that a lot of us here are not comfortable being in the limelight, and I suppose we're even more uncomfortable with things that have been said about us over the last few weeks, and that is why we are all here tonight. We want to speak up and we know it is the right thing to do. We're here to discuss 3 broad points. Firstly, we want to just clarify some untruths about this whole situation. Secondly, we want to address the reasons as to why we left the Mayo Ladies this season. And lastly, we want to run through a timeline of events that occurred this year. So as you can see from around me, there's 14 people sitting and standing in front of you. I just want to make it clear that we did not step away from Mayo football because of 1 or 2 people. Each one in this group either witnessed or experienced an environment that we felt we could not operate or stay within. Again, I want to stress that everyone is here of their own free will. We are ready to speak up. We want to speak up, and we know it is the right thing to do.
Yeah, so there's a photograph of everybody who was at the press conference last night. We'll stick that up as well so you can get a sense of just, they're basically lined out like a team. It's almost a full team. It's nearly, in terms of numbers, a full team. So that is Sarah Tierney there, making sure that people don't think that this is just a single individual who has somehow Pied Pipered everybody into her way of thinking. A number of the players spoke out last night about their reasons for leaving the Mayo panel. Here are their reasons.
We did not step away from Mayo football because of one or two people. Each one in this group either witnessed or experienced an environment that we felt we could not operate or stay within.
It was nothing to do with selection issues. Said in the media that the reason why we left was orchestrated and led by Cora Staunton. This is not true.
There's absolutely no issue with the style of management. I suppose it's what the girls have described is the environment that was created, not for all, but for some, and that's where the issue was.
We've been abused on social media. I'm actually really upset and disappointed by it all, and I just felt like I had no other option but to step away from Mayo football.
Most of the people that have been affected by this, their mental health has really suffered, whether it was in that environment. Some of us probably have suffered from coming out of the environment because of the abuse that has happened in the last number of weeks.
Okay, so that's a bunch of the people involved last night. The last voice you heard there was obviously Cora Staunton. It was Sarah Tierney, I think, who you heard breaking down there, talking about why she felt she had to step away in the end from Mayo football, despite the fact that she had been captain. The players have also said, though, that they do still hope a resolution can be reached so that they can return to Mayo football.
Even before all of this, you'd like to hope that somebody would take some sort of leadership and actually sit everyone around a table and actually discuss the issues at hand here, but that has never happened. I just feel there needs to be more leadership there in trying to actually solve this, for the good of Mayo Ladies football. This is just detrimental to Mayo Ladies football in my eyes.
Yeah, no doubt. And just a reminder, of course, that we have obviously offered Peter Lee the opportunity to come on and respond to the claims that were made in last night's press conference. We're playing you the audio from the Mayo Ladies footballers, the departed Mayo Ladies footballers. There was 14 people in that photograph. We're going to hear from Sarah Tierney and Fiona McHale again here, starting with Sarah Tierney running through the timeline of events.
I took it upon myself to try and fix the massive upheaval within our camp and just try to find a solution moving forward and maybe get everyone back into the one room again. So on Saturday the 7th of July we had a players meeting. It was at 11 o'clock in Brafey, and I led the discussion and I discussed about my experiences the previous 6 months. Probably a lot of players didn't have a clue what was going on behind the scenes, and I never felt it was something that they needed to know, because it's just not a negative thing that players need to be worried about. At the end of the day, I'm their captain, they come to me with issues. And I also spoke briefly on behalf of Carnacon, and I just wanted to stress that the reasons that the Carnacon girls left was not down to anyone in the room, and it was not due to any selection issues. So within that meeting, it was a very open discussion. 6 other players spoke, and we did make a distinction between constructive criticism and between getting personal. And the 6 players that spoke, it was very personal, the manager, the way he treated them. And collectively as a group we all agreed that the behaviour of our manager was just not acceptable. And with that, one person in the room did suggest that maybe we were to remove the manager, and that player is still continuing in the panel, and there was an open discussion about it, and there was discussed the pros and cons of him staying and of him going, but it was equally discussed that he would stay on as our manager. And with that, we decided that there was 6 girls absent from that meeting that day, and I just want to point out that I have all my notes from that meeting, and there was 20 players present that day. Peter said in his podcast the last night that there was 12. There was actually 20 players there, and 6 players missing. And as a group, we said that we'd have to have a meeting the following day, and that was a collective decision to have another meeting and to have everyone in the room, a compulsory meeting. And we wanted the Carnacon Carnacon girls there and to voice exactly for themselves why they left. It's not up to me to talk on behalf of anyone. I mean, we're all grown adults, and we were leaving that meeting that day. We set up an agenda to basically keep times of things, and we said, look, with our meeting tomorrow, we just have to listen to each other. We have to just listen. We have to, whatever move we do going forward, it's going to be a united move. And we did accept that with whatever solution we came up with, we were going to lose players regardless. So that was the Saturday morning. We all left in good spirits, and that evening I was made aware that the manager and players who were not at that meeting were ringing around, and basically management were telling other players that I was being influenced by Carnacon and not to go to this meeting the following day. And subsequently that meeting was pulled by the county board and by a number of players who were not at the meeting on Saturday as well. And with all that, I just felt like I had tried my hardest. I tried to get everyone into the one room to come to a solution to try and move forward, because I do believe there was an All-Ireland final in us again, and I'm actually really upset and disappointed by it all. And I just felt like I had no other option but to step away from Mayo football.
So I suppose just at that point then, that was the Sunday, and Sarah and Orla left the panel at that point. Now this was an opportunity for us to go and speak to the girls about why we left and what our issues were, and that's something that we regret in hindsight, was that we didn't actually speak to the girls at the time before we left as to why we actually did. I suppose we didn't feel like we wanted to influence anyone else, and we just wanted to leave as a group. So we felt then this was an opportunity that we could actually express our issues to girls, and I suppose speak to them. So it was disappointing then that we didn't get to do that. On that same day, the county board arranged a meeting with everyone who had left the panel. So there was actually 9 of us at the meeting that day. With the county board, they asked us questions. We answered everything that they wanted to know. We were in that room for 2 hours, and we expressed all of our issues to them. So at that point, there was 3 players, Sarah, Elaine and Shauna Howley, who hadn't actually been contacted by the county board at all. Shauna and Elaine hadn't left at that point. Sarah wasn't at that meeting but has never been contacted by the county board. So the county board actually do not know why Sarah's left. They don't know why Denise has left. They don't know why Elaine has left. They don't know why Shauna has left. 12 players left the Mayo panel. Out of these 12 players, 1 player has been contacted by the liaison officer. None of the 12 players have been contacted by the manager, and 2 players contacted the liaison officer to tell them that they were leaving the panel, and the liaison officer didn't respond. So I suppose that's just an important thing to mention, is the level of contact that we've had since.
Okay, just so a reminder, you're listening there to some of the audio from last night's press conference in the wake of a statement being issued by the departed Mayo footballers. The picture there, I think it had 13 members of the team in it. Just to give you some more details on the signed statement, obviously they issued a signed statement and then went into the press conference afterwards. It was signed by Sarah Tierney, Fiona McHale, Denise McDonough, who was a selector, Shauna Howley, Marie Corbett, Cora Staunton, Elaine Murphy, Darren Hughes, Martha Carter, Amy Dowling, Saoirse Walsh, Sive Larkin, Orla Conlon, and Michael McHale was also there as well from last night. A reminder, of course, as well that OTB AM is live at Screwfix.ie, championing the trade with a choice of over 20,000 quality trade products. As you can imagine, there's a lot of comments about this, and we'll get back to some of those comments in a couple of minutes. I guess we're responding to this, listening to the audio for the first time. So just to reiterate that, and again I would reiterate for anybody who's just joined us that we've offered the Mayo management the opportunity to come on and give their side of the story, because they said the point of the statement and the point of the press conference, they waited until after the All-Ireland final was over because they didn't want to overshadow the All-Ireland football final, and they're doing it to address some untruths that are out there in the media. They made a lot of reference to some of the claims that have been made about this having to do with feelings, or the fact that it was like some kind of
selection issue.
Yeah. So,
well, when I read the statement, this morning. I said, okay, I'm seeing things like here, player welfare is an issue, lack of communication, being undermined, intimidated, feeling isolated, significant impact on mental health. And you read the statement and you go, okay, what are the specifics here? And then I just listened to 40 minutes of very hard-hitting, stark audio from obviously one side, and we'll hear the other side, I'm sure, in due course the next few days. But I suppose the questions I'd asked myself are they making it up? They're amateur players. Do they really need this coming out and with the 14 people, 12, including a selector, Denise McDonough, who said there was a lack of communication, transparency and respect. And she goes into specific examples. What they've got to gain by this? These players, a lot of these players have been playing a long time for Mayo. What do they really have to gain? I'm sure all they want to do is play football and get to the business end of the All-Ireland Championships. And all I'm hearing is the word aggression is the word I'm hearing a lot in the press conference. Overly aggressive, repetitively aggressive. Never felt so intimidated in all my life. These are actual quotes from Sarah Tierney from the press conference. Negative comments about my personality and performance. Massive toll on the mental health. So these are not just run-of-the-mill issues. I think about gear or about who's in the team or not in the team. This is a pretty hard-hitting press conference that we've heard today, and I was taken aback by it, I have to say.
Yeah, it's they talk as well fairly openly about having made a couple of mistakes and not addressing the players, those two players in particular who left, who aren't part of the kind of con crew. And had taken that opportunity to explain exactly to their teammates about why they were leaving, and so they feel like that's one of the reasons why some of their teammates who might not have experienced exactly what they have experienced. And that was the other side of this. It was like somebody made reference to Peter Lee saying that he believed in equality, but they felt that equality means treating everybody the same as opposed to treating certain players differently. And so that's obviously some of that becomes a matter of conjecture and a matter of opinion. If I treat you the same as I treat this other person doesn't feel they're getting a fair crack of the whip. That's difficult to discern, but there are specific examples. Peter Lee talked about having had individual feedback sessions with the players after the Connacht football final. It's quite late in the season to be doing that, but one of the players apparently was told that they were lazy, and another player was told that they weren't committed. I don't know if is it can you call people lazy these days? I don't know. Is that
that was one of the things I heard. Another quote from, I think, was Denise McDonough. She was asked if she was blind or stupid or both. That's in the press conference. That was said. Some people not giving feedback. Yeah, the feedback about being lazy, about not being committed enough. That was despite missing only one training session all year. That was also said in the press conference. So, but Sarah Tierney's statement is extremely stark, I would say, and to me, this is just not a run of the mill, issue within a camp. This seems to be a little bit more serious than that. And
this isn't feelings, or selection,
or gear, or training conditions. This is a county board needs to get involved now situation, and impartially.
Yeah, and so that was one of the other bits of detail that kind of emerged. There had been the beginnings of a process where there was supposed to be a mediator, and the mediator came and did one session, and then nobody involved in that mediation process heard back. It was almost like somehow a pin got pulled on that process. So the county board absolutely have questions to answer. It'll be interesting to hear from Peter Lee when he does eventually take us up on our offer to go through his side of or his answers, I guess, to the issues that have been raised, because there are very specific issues this time.
Yeah, this is not hot air or something you can't. These are specific things that are being levelled.
Yeah.
With the word, as I said, constantly I'm seeing the word and hearing the word in the press conference, which is the word aggressive.
Yeah. There had been a lot of criticism of of Cora in particular, and then of the other Mayo footballers who left, saying that they were throwing the toys out of the pram basically because they had been dropped from the team. And the obvious immediate answer to that is that 4 players who were playing and were picked for the Connacht final ended up leaving the panel as well, which kind of is like, well, that's kind of, it's hard to see how it would be just a selection issue. But also the notion that this has had no impact on them, that like, you know, we are supposed to somehow decide that you are not so upset about this, that it's not having an impact on your mental health or how you're going about, like, these are clearly unbelievably committed people who have reached All-Ireland finals, who have in the past gone to war against their own county board to get and to raise higher standards. The notion that this is like just something that it's water off a duck's back to them, like, I felt like there was a lot of casual misogyny around the discussions that I've borne witness to on Twitter when people are like, your man's clearly right.
These are amateur players, they don't get paid a cent. What they've got to gain by turning up at a press conference and bursting into tears without maybe something happening to precipitate that.
Yeah, so as I said, we've had a fair few comments about this and we'll get to those in just a couple of minutes. And we're obviously looking forward to hearing from Peter Leahy about this. Obviously, he was just getting the audio this morning the same way everybody else was. It is about 50 minutes long and it'll be interesting to see exactly what the statement from the Mayo County Board is at this point, because obviously they have to come out and now answer the fact that they seem to have chronically mismanaged this situation. Like, you would hope at this point too that it's reached now intervention time from the LGFA, where they're going to say, okay, we're going to hire a mediator, we'll pay for it, it'll be completely independent, it's not somebody that any either side will get dibs on, or you don't get power of veto over. We're going to appoint this person and everybody has to agree that this is going to be binding whatever happens. Now, we're not going to bind you to playing for the county again, because we can't do that, because obviously as you keep
be bound to the process, bound to the outcome of the process.
And that we'll try and be as honest as possible. Once again,
this is back to, I think, what I'm saying, a completely different issue and not a related issue, but back to what I'm talking about with the Tyrone thing. That where sometimes you just need the central body to just come in there and say, okay guys, we've had enough of this drama and debate within the media and whoever's right and whoever's wrong, that we need to actually, you know, the 32 republics can be sometimes a little bit of a negative for the GAA, and sometimes you prefer to see the central body come out and say, okay, we're almost at the issue a statement to say we've noticed the dialogue within Mayo and we're observing it closely and you know, we'd like to see a resolution, and if we don't see a resolution, we'll have to, you know, get involved.
Yeah, and now that it definitely appears as if that time is now. So finally for now, from the departed Mayo Ladies statement last night, Sarah Tierney here recounting her year as captain under Peter Leahy, detailing how the issues came about and how they spiralled over the summer.
We didn't leave because of Gora, we didn't leave because of selection issues. For me personally, I would have noticed negativity within his management style from the outset of the year. So I'll give you a few examples. I was actually late returning to the Mayo panel this year. I returned on the 12th of January. I was sitting exams, so I was away. And when I returned to the panel, we had our training the first night. To just give you a brief background, I had actually a very good relationship with Peter in 2017 and 2013 when he was involved with us previously. So my first night back, the majority of the training was all running, and I just said a passing comment to him being like, geez Peter, is it going to be all running tonight, or are we going to do any football? I didn't mean anything malicious by it, it's not my character. And anyways, the following night I received a phone call from Peter about the comment I made, and he basically attacked me on the phone and basically said he didn't give a F how many all-stars I had or what name I had made for myself in football, that he was the manager and that what he says goes this year. He didn't care what name anyone had, that he would have no problem dropping someone that stepped out of line. He also said to me that night on the phone call that he would be making a call to Marie Corbett as well about her behaviour, that it was inappropriate at training. Now, the tone and the context of this conversation kind of set the tone for the year ahead and any encounters that I had with them. Like time and time again, obviously my role as captain, I was going to him about questions and comments, and it was constantly thrown back in my face about negative comments about my personality or about my performance. There's a few more examples as well. on the 30th of May. We had training in Rochford Bridge up the country, and at the end of the training everyone was kind of gone, and I just went up to Peter and I was like, look Peter, we kind of have a big issue in the backs all season in the league. We're conceding high scores. I think there's a massive communication issue here, and I think maybe if we could get a past player in to either come in as a player or a guest coach and maybe just talk us through a few things, I think it would really add value to the setup. So he just took it on board that night. The following Friday night, the 1st of June, it was approximately 6:30 down in the Centre of Excellence. I'll never forget it. He came in and gave me the curly finger, as he called it, and summons me out of the room, and I just knew what was coming. I was brought away from all players, from all of management, and it was like a personal attack that evening. I can only describe it as I've never felt so intimidated in all my life. He basically said to me that I was getting absolutely roasted at training, that I was performing absolutely shite, and that the reason that I was so distracted the previous night of training is because I was so caught up with going to him about this suggestion of bringing this guest player in, and he was doing this action, you're listening to the others. I was kind of like standing back, and he was getting like visibly aggressive with me at this stage, and it was probably the first time that I stood up to him and I was like, who are these others that you're referring to? Like, I don't understand what you're on about. And anyways, like, the conversation ended that night, but I swore driving home that night from training that never again would I be in a one-on-one situation with him unless the liaison officer was there, because I just felt totally intimidated. Again, there was another example on June the 8th. It was 2 weeks before our Connacht final. We'd played Roscommon in a challenge game, and as I was leaving the dressing room, I saw about 10 players, which is nearly a third of our panel, over at a car with Denise as well, and there was a player visibly upset, and I was like, what is going on here? And Peter had mistreated this player, excluded her from the team that evening and just treated her really badly. And me and Denise were consoling this player, and Denise was apologising to this player. This player was told that she wasn't selected on the team and that night on purpose, and that she wasn't going to make the Connacht final squad. So 2 weeks beforehand to tell this to a player is just not acceptable. So while me and Denise were consoling this player, the manager was upstairs having a laugh and joke with another girl who's good friends with the girl who was upset, saying, oh, you'll have a fun journey home tonight. Like, that in my eyes is just not acceptable. And like, throughout the year I've had a really difficult relationship with the manager. I can honestly say it was repetitive. It wasn't a once-off occurrence, and on a number of occasions it was just overly aggressive. And like, I don't know what I did to deserve this, and like, I feel like my role as captain, like, I couldn't perform it to the best of my ability because I was completely being undermined. I felt isolated, paranoid, intimidated, and I started to lack hugely in my own self-confidence because of it. And like, a lot of the issues that I would have spoke to him about that led to these interactions were in relation to like attendance at training, communication between players, and strength and conditioning, requesting an upper body gym programme, like, which I feel is very much within my right as captain to ask and to demand the best. And I was just constantly shot down.
Pretty strong stuff there from Sarah Tierney, the former captain of the Mayo Ladies football team, speaking about her relationship with Peter Leahy, the manager of the Mayo Ladies football team. And I'll just reiterate that we were on to Peter Leahy this morning. He said he would come on. Then he got a copy of the audio and said that he was going to wait until he'd gone through the full press conference in detail so he would have an opportunity to respond. And we've extended that invite for him to come on either on tonight's show on the radio, on News Talk, or of course to come on the show tomorrow morning here on OTB AM. But that, I've never heard anything like that in my life.
It's serious, and it's not a lady just saying that on her own. She's got 13 people around her, including Cora Staunton, you know, from one of the most well-known Gaelic footballer in the country, in ladies Gaelic football. So, I said these players they didn't just stack up and start playing Gaelic football this year. They've been playing Gaelic football a long time. No, and I think that wouldn't mind hearing from the county board on it. Yeah, and from Peter Lee, obviously it's going to be interesting to see when he comes out to talk about this today. Now, there was one thing, the last line of the statement signed by the players and selector was that they hope this would be the end of the matter. You're guaranteed that there's definitely not going to be the end of the matter, that
this is as explosive a situation as I can remember in GAA in a long time, and it's going to roll and roll. So we'll be covering the story. Check out more details on offtheball.com. We'll put the audio up. Obviously, you can always get back and listen to any of the stuff that we've played on the show. As soon as the show is over, you can listen back to it on youtube.com/offtheball or on Twitter. The full file goes up there and you can just scroll back to anywhere in the show that you wanted to. And if you ever just want to listen to the radio show, the show as radio, you can do that, of course, on offtheball.com. There's a player for you there as well. That's pretty much all we've got time for on the show today. My thanks to everybody involved in putting the show together, and a final reminder that OTB AM is live with Screwfix.ie, championing the trade with a choice of over 20,000 quality trade products. The radio show tonight, Ray Boom Boom Mancini talks to Owen Sheehan and Ronan Mullen about the fact that he killed a man in the ring and had to continue his career as a boxer in the aftermath of that, and the PTSD basically that affects somebody after an incident like that. One of the last 15-round fights that there ever was in the early 80s. Boxing changes as a result of that. So he's always an interesting character. He gave a fantastic interview to Joe about 6 months ago. So he's in Ireland yesterday and dropped into the studio. So the lads will have that for you on the radio tonight. And loads more besides. Check out our social channels. And John, thanks very much.
Come on, you Spurs.
Oh yeah, Champions League is back.
Yes.
We'll see you tomorrow. Good luck.
OTB AM.
Thanks to Screwfix.ie, championing the trade with a dedicated call centre.